The diplomat had never expected to find himself on the alien planet of Zoltron. It was one of the farthest reaches of the galaxy, a place where few humans had ventured. The news of this planet's advanced technology and its monarch princess, Lyra, had sparked interest among Earth's leaders, and now here he was, stepping out of his ship and onto the surface of a world that seemed entirely alien. The sky above him was a strange shade of violet, with floating islands far in the distance. The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, and strange creatures scurried across the landscape, unbothered by his presence. He had been told to expect a meeting with Princess Lyra, but what exactly he was supposed to discuss, he didn't know. His mission was simple: establish peaceful relations and ensure that Earth could trade with the Zoltronians. Still, the mere thought of speaking with one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy made him uneasy. As he made his way to the palace, the city around him buzzed with life. Alien architecture, with its tall, spiraling towers, seemed to grow out of the very ground itself, as if the city was part of the planet rather than simply built upon it. There was an elegance to the design, a harmony with nature that humans could only dream of. The streets were lined with beings of all shapes and sizes, some humanoid, others not, but all moving with purpose. When he arrived at the palace, the air seemed to shift. The silence was heavy, almost expectant. The palace was grand, but it wasn't just its size that commanded attention. It was the aura of mystery surrounding it. The gates parted slowly as he approached, as if the building itself was welcoming him. He stepped inside, walking down long, winding corridors until he reached a large chamber. The walls of the room were adorned with intricate designs, depicting the history of the Zoltronian people. They told tales of their ancestors, their battles, and their triumphs. But at the far end of the room, sitting on a throne of smooth, polished stone, was Princess Lyra. She was everything the stories had told him: beautiful, powerful, and intimidating. Her long, silver hair cascaded down her back, and her features were sharp, almost otherworldly. But it wasn't her beauty that captured his attention. It was the way she held herself. There was a calm certainty in her posture, a quiet strength that made it clear she was in charge. The most striking thing about her, however, was the fact that she was blind. Her eyes, though they appeared perfectly normal, seemed to look through him rather than at him. It was as if she saw the world in a way humans couldn't comprehend. The diplomat's heart skipped a beat as she spoke, her voice soft but firm, cutting through the silence. "You are my chosen one. Stay with me tonight," she said, her words like a command, though wrapped in the gentlest of tones. He froze, unsure of how to respond. He had expected to discuss trade agreements or perhaps the future of their relationship, but this? He had not been prepared for this. His mind raced with questions. Why him? Why had she chosen him, a mere diplomat, to be her guest? There were plenty of other humans who could have come in his place. Before he could gather his thoughts, the princess continued, her voice filled with a kind of authority that demanded respect. "I know you are confused, but I chose you for a reason. You are different from the others. You will understand," she said. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, but what that meaning was, he couldn't yet grasp. He glanced around the room as if searching for some sign, some clue, to explain what was happening, but there was nothing, just her, sitting there, waiting. The diplomat took a hesitant step forward, unsure of what to do next. Should he accept her invitation? He had no idea what to expect from a night spent with a blind alien princess, let alone one who seemed to hold so much power. He couldn't help but feel drawn to her. There was something about her. Something that went beyond the strange, unsettling feeling in the pit of his stomach. "What is it you want from me?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper, though he wasn't sure why. The words seemed to come. out on their own, as if his mind had taken over without consulting him first. She smiled softly, though it wasn't the kind of smile that conveyed warmth. It was more knowing, as though she had anticipated his question. "You will see in time," she replied, her eyes never leaving his face. "But for now, just stay. It is all I ask." And with that, the diplomat found himself standing there, at the edge of the unknown, unable to refuse her. He didn't know what awaited him that night, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The diplomat had barely settled into the lavish chamber when Princess Lyra motioned for him to sit beside her. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the palace's energy systems and the delicate sound of wind chimes coming from an open window. It felt almost surreal, as though time had slowed down and all his thoughts were focused on the mysterious woman before him. Despite her blindness, Princess Lyra seemed to know exactly where he was. Her head turned in his direction, and her lips curled slightly as though she could sense his discomfort. The diplomat hesitated, but eventually took a seat across from her, his mind racing with questions that he couldn't seem to put into words. "You are wondering why I have brought you here," she said, her voice soft, yet unwavering. "And why I chose you over all the others." Her words didn't seem like a question, but more of a statement of truth. It was as if she already knew exactly what was going through his mind. The diplomat nodded slowly, unsure of what else to say. He had been summoned here under the pretense of diplomatic relations, but this situation was nothing like what he had expected. "I know that your species is curious, that you want answers," she continued, "but not all answers can be given immediately. Some things must be discovered through trust." She paused for a moment, allowing her words to sink in. "And trust is something that is earned. But I believe in you. I have known from the moment I first sensed your presence that you would be the one to understand." Her words were strange to him. She spoke as though their meeting was predestined, as though her choice of him had been made long before his arrival. The diplomat felt the weight of her words, but was still unsure how to respond. His mind kept racing back to her initial invitation. "You are my chosen one. Stay with me tonight." He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I don't understand." "What do you mean by understand? What is it that you need from me?" Lyra's eyes, though blind, seemed to pierce right through him. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a softer tone. "I cannot see the world. As you do, diplomat, my sight was taken from me long ago, but my other senses are sharper than you could ever imagine. I see the world in a way that few can comprehend." The diplomat couldn't help but be intrigued. What did she mean by that? How could she possibly see the world differently from everyone else? She continued, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "In my blindness, I have learned to rely on my other senses, hearing, touch, and even a certain feeling that comes from the energy around me. I can feel emotions, the ripples in the atmosphere when someone enters a room, the weight of their intentions." She paused, letting her words hang in the air for a moment. "And I have felt yours." The diplomat furrowed his brow. He wasn't sure if he believed her or not. He had heard stories of aliens with extraordinary abilities, but this seemed to be something different. Her confidence was unnerving, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something far more important going on than a simple diplomatic visit. He cleared his throat, trying to focus. "I still don't understand. Why me? What makes me so special?" Lyra smiled again, a small, knowing smile that seemed to soften her otherwise serious demeanor. "You are human," she said simply. "Your species is different. You have qualities that are rare. I have seen many visitors from other worlds, but none of them have had what you possess. There is strength in you, a kind of power that can change the fate of not just your world, but mine as well. The diplomat stared at her, his mind struggling to make sense of her words. He was just a diplomat, not a hero or a soldier. How could he possibly have the power to change the fate of her people? "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, shaking his head. "I'm just a man, sent to do a job. I'm not someone who can change anything." Lyra's expression softened, but there was no pity in her gaze, only understanding. "You think that because you cannot see what lies ahead. But I can. And I know that you are more than just a diplomat. You are the key to unlocking something far greater than you realize." The diplomat felt a chill run down his spine as her words echoed in his mind. What was she talking about? What key? He couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward her, as if something deep inside him was beginning to awaken. "You will see in time," she said quietly, almost as if speaking to herself. "The future is not something that can be predicted. It must be created piece by piece, through those who have the courage to shape it." The room grew silent once again, and the diplomat found himself lost in her words. The sense of destiny, of something inevitable, was hanging heavily in the air. And yet, he still didn't fully understand what he was supposed to do. Why had she called him here? Why had she chosen him? As if sensing his confusion, Lyra reached out her hand. Her fingers brushed his, and the diplomat felt a strange warmth spread through him. Her touch was gentle but firm, as though she was anchoring him to something greater than himself. "You will stay with me tonight," she said once more, her voice a steady calm. "And in that time, you will begin to understand." The diplomat sat still, his mind struggling to process everything the princess had told him. Every word she spoke seemed to carry weight, and each of her looks pierced deeper than any ordinary glance. The idea that he could be the key to something greater felt impossible, but there was no denying the conviction in her voice. He had never met anyone like Princess Lyra before. Her blindness didn't make her weak or dependent. It only seemed to make her stronger, more aware of everything around her. And somehow, she had chosen him. Lyra leaned back slightly, her posture regal but relaxed, as though she had made her decision long ago and was simply waiting for him to catch up. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like a moment suspended in time, where all things were possible and nothing needed to be rushed. "You must be wondering about my blindness," she said, breaking the silence. "I see more than you could imagine, but not the way you do. My other senses are heightened. I can feel the slightest shift in the air, hear the faintest sound, and sense emotions in a way that most beings cannot." The diplomat nodded, though he didn't fully understand what she meant. How could one sense emotions? It sounded strange to him, yet there was a calm certainty in her words that made him pause. "When I first lost my sight, I thought it was a curse. But now I realize it was a gift," she continued. "It forced me to rely on other abilities that have allowed me to lead my people." Her voice softened, and for the first time the diplomat sensed a hint of vulnerability. "But the gift of sight, that is something I can never fully reclaim. My people look to me for guidance, but they are blind in their own way as well. They cannot see what I see, and that makes it difficult for them to understand the changes I am trying to bring." The diplomat sat quietly, his thoughts spinning. He had heard of her people's struggles, but he hadn't known how deeply it affected her. Her blindness had taken away a part of her, but it had also given her something far more valuable, a unique perspective. Yet there was still an emptiness in her eyes, a longing for something she could not have. "I want to help my people, but there is something missing," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I believe that humans, in particular, may have the answers we need." The diplomat shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. He had come here to establish peace and trade, not to fix anyone's problems. He was just a diplomat, a messenger, not a savior. How could he possibly help an entire alien race? "You're wrong," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm not the one who can help you. I'm just here to do my job, to make sure Earth and your people can work together, that's all. There's no great power in me." Lyra didn't seem offended by his words. Instead, she regarded him with a calm intensity, as though she were considering him carefully. "I do not expect you to understand just yet," she said, "but I know that the answer lies with you. You may not see it now, but in time you will." Her words felt like a puzzle with pieces he couldn't quite grasp. The diplomat didn't want to believe her. He didn't want to think that he had some kind of power hidden deep within him. But her presence, her certainty, made it hard to argue. There was something about the way she spoke, something that made him want to trust her, even if he didn't fully understand why. "I'm not a warrior," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "I'm not a leader. I'm just a man sent to do a job. You need someone stronger than me." Lyra smiled gently, as though she knew exactly what he was feeling. "Strength comes in many forms," she said. "The strength to make decisions, the strength to lead, the strength to trust. These are the qualities I need from you, not physical power. The strength to stand by me, to see beyond what is right in front of you. That is the power I believe you have." Her words echoed in his mind long after she stopped speaking. He had always thought of strength in terms of physical ability, of force and fighting. But now, she was showing him that there were other kinds of strength, more subtle but just as important. Could he really have the strength she was talking about? Lyra's eyes, though sightless, seemed to soften as she sensed his inner conflict. "I know this is a lot to ask," she said, her tone compassionate. "But I believe in you. You may not see it now, but I trust that you will." The diplomat felt a shift in the air, a tension he hadn't noticed before. The weight of her trust was heavy, but in some strange way it was also comforting. He had never been the type to question his purpose. But now, in the presence of this alien princess, he was beginning to wonder if his mission was about something more than just diplomacy. Maybe, just maybe, it was about understanding something greater than he could see, something that could change the fate of her people and perhaps even his own. He looked at her, his mind still spinning, but for the first time since his arrival, he felt a sense of clarity. Perhaps he didn't have the answers yet, but maybe, just maybe, he was meant to find them. "I'll stay," he said quietly, his words almost a promise. Lyra smiled again, a small, satisfied smile. "Good. Stay with me, and together we will find the path forward." And in that moment, the diplomat realized that he had just taken the first step into something far greater than he could ever have imagined. The diplomat stood at the edge of the balcony, gazing out over the city of Zoltron. The sight before him was like nothing he had ever seen, a vast, thriving metropolis built into the very landscape, with towering spires that seemed to reach for the stars. The city was alive, humming with the energy of a civilization that had been around far longer than his own. Despite the beauty of it all, the diplomat couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something he couldn't yet understand. Lyra had asked him to stay in the palace with her for the time being, and though he had agreed, he felt more like a guest in someone else's world than a partner. He didn't belong here, and the uncertainty about his role only grew the longer he stayed. The princess was unlike anyone he had ever met, her strength, intelligence, and mysterious abilities, pulling him in directions he couldn't predict. He couldn't help but feel a strange connection to her, but it was a connection that left him feeling both intrigued and uneasy. He turned away from the balcony and made his way back to the inner chambers, where Lyra awaited him. She sat in the same spot as before, her presence as commanding as ever. Despite her blindness, she was never lost, always aware of her surroundings in a way that seemed impossible. Her senses were more finely tuned than any human's, a fact that made him both admire and fear her. "You're wondering what happens next," Lyra said, her voice breaking the silence, "and I can tell you that you are not alone in your confusion." The diplomat looked at her, feeling the weight of her gaze even though she couldn't see him. He nodded slowly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. You've given me a lot to think about, but I still don't understand how I can help you and your people." Lyra's lips curved into a soft smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "The answer isn't something that can be given to you all at once. It must unfold piece by piece like a puzzle you have yet to complete." She paused for a moment, allowing the silence to hang in the air. The diplomat's mind raced with thoughts of what she might mean. Was this some sort of test? A challenge? Or was there something more at play that he couldn't yet grasp? "There is a darkness on the horizon," Lyra continued, her voice steady and calm. "An enemy, one that will come to us sooner than we expect. I know this because I have felt it deep within the energy of this world. I have seen their approach in my dreams, and I know they will stop at nothing to destroy us." The diplomat felt a chill run down his spine. An enemy? He had not been briefed on anything like that. He had come to Zoltron on a mission of peace, but now it seemed that peace was far from assured. "What kind of enemy?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. Lyra's smile faded, replaced by a look of deep concentration. "A force unlike anything you have faced on your world. They are powerful, relentless, and they will stop at nothing to claim what they want. But there is something else you need to understand. This enemy has been in our midst for longer than we realized. They have infiltrated us from the inside, manipulating those closest to the throne." The diplomat's heart raced. He had been trained to handle delicate situations, but this was something far more dangerous than he had expected. He tried to process her words, but they didn't seem to make sense. If there were enemies within, how could they be stopped? "You've already sensed the truth," Lyra said, as if reading his mind. "The ones who seek to destroy us are already here. They wear the faces of our allies, our friends, even those in the highest circles of power. The traitors are hidden in plain sight, and it will be up to us to expose them." The diplomat felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. The realization hit him hard. The trust he had placed in the people of Zoltron was now in question. How could he be sure who was friend and who was foe? The situation had become far more complicated than he had ever anticipated. "You think I'm asking you to fight," Lyra said, her voice soft but insistent. "But what I need from you is not your strength in battle. It is your strength to see what others cannot. You must help me uncover the truth." The diplomat opened his mouth to speak but stopped, unsure of how to respond. He had come here as a diplomat, not as a detective. He wasn't trained for this kind of work. Yet, looking at Lyra, he realized that he couldn't refuse her. There was something in her eyes, a mix of hope and determination, that made him want to help her, no matter the cost. "How do we start?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Lyra's expression softened. "We begin by watching and listening. The enemy is always in motion and they are clever. They will try to hide their true intentions, but we will find them. I can sense when something is wrong, but I need you to help me see the bigger picture. Together, we will expose the truth." The diplomat nodded slowly. He didn't know if he was ready for what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for sure. His mission had just changed. He was no longer simply a messenger of peace. He was now a partner in a much bigger struggle. And the stakes had never been higher. as he stood there, the weight of their shared responsibility hanging between them. The diplomat realized that his time on Zoltron had only just begun. What he had come here to do was far different than he had imagined, and in the end, it would be his choices that would determine the future of not just his world, but hers as well. The diplomat felt the weight of the task ahead of him pressing down on him with each passing moment. He had agreed to help Princess Lyra, but the path was growing more uncertain by the day. The realization that their enemies had been hiding in plain sight made everything feel more dangerous. They weren't just fighting for peace anymore. They were fighting for survival. It had only been a few days since they started their investigation, but already the diplomat could sense the growing tension between the palace's factions. The people of Zoltron were proud, and there was a deep distrust of outsiders. The diplomat knew it would take more than just his word to convince them that something was wrong. He needed proof. But every lead they followed seemed to circle back to nothing. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to close in. Lyra was different now. The confident princess he had first met was still there, but there was a new edge to her. Her senses, already sharp, had become even more attuned. She could feel the slightest shift in the air, hear the whispers of the palace's secrets, and even sense the emotions of the people around her. But the deeper they dug into the conspiracy, the more isolated she seemed. It was as if the palace itself was turning against her. "You're getting closer," she told him one evening, her voice calm but filled with something he couldn't quite place. "The truth is out there, but it's hidden behind layers of lies and deceit. You need to trust your instincts." The diplomat was still struggling to find his footing in this world, but he couldn't deny the sense of urgency that was growing within him. Something had to give. They couldn't keep chasing shadows forever. The princess's senses were uncanny, and they had uncovered several key pieces of information. The palace's head of security, a powerful figure named Kalen, had been acting strangely, giving orders that seemed to undermine the princess's authority. But every time they tried to confront him, he had an explanation, a justification for his actions. It was as if he was always one step ahead, playing a game that the diplomat didn't fully understand. "I've seen the way he looks at you," Lyra said one night as they sat alone, the quiet hum of the palace filling the room. "He's not loyal to me. He's loyal to something or someone else." The diplomat frowned. "But why would he betray you? You're the one who holds the power." Lyra's eyes, though sightless, seemed to see everything. "Power doesn't always come from the throne," she said softly. "It comes from knowledge, from influence. I can feel it when people lie, when they hide their true intentions. Kalen has secrets, and he's not the only one." The diplomat couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every corner of the palace seemed to hide something, a shadow that slipped just out of view whenever he tried to look closer. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. There was no clear enemy, no obvious threat. Everything was hidden, and the people he thought he could trust were now shrouded in suspicion. Late one night, after they had spent hours going over the palace's security records, the diplomat and Lyra were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. It was Kalen. "We need to talk," he said, his tone colder than usual. Lyra's posture stiffened. "About what?" Kalen's eyes flicked to the diplomat, but he didn't respond. Instead, he stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The atmosphere shifted immediately, a chill settling over the space. "I'm afraid your investigation is getting too close to the truth," Kalen said, his voice low but filled with a strange authority. "You've been poking around where you shouldn't." Lyra's voice was steady, but there was a hard edge to it. "You're the one who's been hiding the truth, Kalen. I can feel it, and you won't stop me from uncovering it." The diplomat watched the two of them, his mind racing. He had never seen Lyra this fierce, this determined. It was clear that Kalen was part of the puzzle. But the question was, what exactly was he hiding? "You don't know what you're dealing with," Kalen warned, stepping closer. "The stakes are higher than you realize. If you keep digging, you won't like what you find." Lyra stood up, her figure imposing even without her sight. "I'll find out what I need to, whether you help me or not." Kalen's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll regret it." The diplomat could feel the tension in the room thickening. Something was about to break, and he wasn't sure if they were ready for it. He had no idea what Kalen was threatening, but the words felt like the beginning of something much bigger than they had anticipated. The silence that followed was heavy, and Kalen lingered for a moment, his eyes flicking between the two of them. Finally, he turned and left the room without another word, leaving a cold stillness behind him. Lyra remained standing, her back straight and her fists clenched at her sides. The diplomat watched her, wondering what thoughts were running through her mind. He had seen her face many times, but now it was different. There was no fear, no hesitation. There was only resolve. "What now?" he asked, his voice quiet, but filled with uncertainty. Lyra's response was simple. "Now we prepare for what's coming. We know where the truth lies, and we'll fight to bring it to light." The diplomat nodded slowly, the weight of their mission settling on him once more. He didn't know what they were about to face, but he knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back. They were in this together, and whatever secrets Kalen and the others were hiding, they would soon be revealed. The diplomat stood at the edge of the dimly lit room, staring at the door through which Kalen had exited. The atmosphere felt charged, with an invisible tension that seemed to wrap around him like a thick fog. He couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to happen. The entire situation had taken a turn none of them had expected. What had started as a simple mission of peace had evolved into a fight for survival, one that was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Lyra was calm, as she always was, but the diplomat could see the storm behind her composed exterior. She had faced many challenges in her life, but this, he sensed, was different. Kalen's warning had rattled her, though she hadn't shown it. She was trying to maintain control, but he could feel the weight of the choices she was making. "What do we do now?" the diplomat asked, his voice breaking the silence between them. It was a simple question, but one with no simple answer. They were up against something much larger than they had realized, and the stakes were higher than they had ever been. Lyra's eyes were closed, her face calm, but there was a slight tremble in her hands. The diplomat knew she was fighting to keep her emotions in check. He could see it in the way she held herself, the way she refused to let fear show. She had to be strong for her people, for the future of her world. "We prepare for what comes next," Lyra replied quietly, her voice steady. Kalen's warning was not just a threat, it was a message. He knows we're getting too close. He will do everything in his power to stop us. The diplomat took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. He had expected some resistance, but not this level of deception. It was as if the very foundation of the Zaltronian government was built on lies, and Kalen was one of its pillars. But who was really pulling the strings? Who was the true enemy? Lyra seemed to read his thoughts. "Kalen is just a pawn, just like the others. There's a deeper conspiracy at play, one that goes all the way to the heart of the palace." She paused, her face tightening. "I believe that whoever is behind this has been using Kalen as a means to an end. But the true mastermind is someone far more dangerous." The diplomat's mind raced, a hidden enemy controlling everything from behind the scenes. It sounded like something out of a nightmare. "Who do you think it is?" he asked. Lyra exhaled, slowly, her breath quiet but filled with a sense of dread. "It's someone who knows how to manipulate the system, someone with power over the council, the military, and even the economy. This person has influence over every part of my kingdom, and I believe they've been working with Kaylin for years. He could feel the weight of her words, and the reality of the situation began to settle in. This wasn't just about a few traitors. This was a widespread conspiracy, one that had infiltrated every part of the government. The princess was fighting an invisible war, one that no one else could see. "How do we stop them?" the diplomat asked, his voice laced with a mixture of urgency and frustration. They had no time to waste. If they didn't act soon, the entire planet might be lost to the conspiracy. Lyra stood up, her posture regal and resolute. "We start by gaining their trust," she said. "We need to get closer to the people who hold the most power. We need to uncover their plan and find out who is truly in charge." The diplomat nodded, his mind already working through the possibilities. But how could they gain the trust of people who were already so deeply entrenched in the conspiracy? How could they find the truth without exposing themselves to even more danger? "There's a high council meeting tomorrow," Lyra continued, her voice low but determined. "The council members are the ones who control the fate of the planet. If we can get to them, we might be able to find out who's behind this." The diplomat felt a flicker of hope. If they could attend the meeting, it might give them the opening they needed to learn more. But it wasn't going to be easy. The council was filled with powerful individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. "We'll need to be careful," the diplomat said, thinking aloud. "If we're going to get close to the council members, we'll have to stay one step ahead. Kaylin will be watching us, and so will the others." Lyra's expression softened slightly. "I know it won't be easy, but we have no other choice. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything." The diplomat took a deep breath, his resolve solidifying. He had come to Zoltron with one purpose, but now he had a much greater responsibility. He was no longer just a visitor or a diplomat. He was part of something much bigger. The future of an entire planet rested on his ability to uncover the truth. Lyra stepped closer, her presence steady and unwavering. "Together, we'll find the truth. We'll expose those who think they can hide in the shadows. And we'll fight for the future of this world." The diplomat met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. It was a dangerous path they were about to take. But there was no turning back now. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't in this alone. As they made their preparations for the council meeting, the diplomat couldn't help but feel that they were on the edge of something huge. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, but the truth was still out of reach. All they could do now was move forward, step by step, until the veil of deception was lifted. The council meeting was scheduled to take place in a grand hall within the heart of the palace. The diplomat could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him as he walked beside Lyra, each step echoing through the quiet corridors. The plan they had developed wasn't perfect, but it was the best they had. Today, they would uncover the truth, or at least take a step closer to it. The future of the Zoltronian people rested in their hands. Lyra, despite her calm exterior, was clearly tense. The diplomat could sense the storm within her, the need for answers that had been building for so long. She had spent her life ruling with wisdom, using her sharp senses to guide her people. But now she was up against a force much larger than any single individual, a conspiracy that had taken root in the very heart of her government. As they entered the council hall, the diplomat couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The room was massive, with towering columns reaching up to the high ceiling. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings depicting the history of Zoltron, the struggles and triumphs of their people. It was a symbol of the strength and pride of the Zoltronian civilization. But now, in this moment, it felt more like a trap. The members of the council sat at a long, polished table, their expressions unreadable. The diplomat knew that most of them had already taken sides, but in this room, no one could be trusted, not even Lyra's most trusted advisors. The air was thick with suspicion. each person aware of the shifting allegiances, the uncertainty hanging like a cloud over them all. Lyra moved toward the center of the room, her presence commanding attention even without her sight. The members of the council looked toward her, some with disdain, others with curiosity. The diplomat stood at her side, aware that every move they made would be scrutinized. As Lyra took her seat, the council's leader, a tall, imposing figure named Torin, spoke up. His voice was smooth, but there was an edge to it, a subtle threat behind his words. "Princess Lyra," he began, his eyes narrowing. "We've all been waiting for this moment. I trust you've come to discuss the future of our people." Lyra nodded, her voice calm and unwavering. "I have. But what I came to discuss is not the future of Zoltron, but its present. There are traitors among us, Torin, and it's time they were exposed." The diplomat could feel the temperature in the room drop as Lyra's words hung in the air. The council members shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting around the table. They had all heard the rumors, but now they were hearing the truth, spoken aloud by the princess herself. Torin's expression didn't change, but the diplomat could see the flicker of fear behind his eyes. "Traitors?" he repeated, his voice steady but betraying a hint of uncertainty. "What are you talking about, Lyra?" "I'm talking about the people who have been working against the well-being of Zoltron," Lyra said, her tone sharp. "The ones who have been hiding in the shadows, manipulating events to their advantage. You've all seen the signs. You've all known something was wrong." The diplomat watched as the council members exchanged nervous glances. The atmosphere, tense and electric. They were caught in a web of lies, and now they were faced with the truth. How would they react? Would they stand by their princess, or would they defend the very system that had allowed corruption to fester? Lyra continued, her voice gaining strength. "I have felt the shifts in the air, heard the whispers in the corridors. The enemy is not just outside our borders. It's here, among us, and I intend to find out who it is." Torin stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is preposterous," he said, his voice rising. "You accuse us all of treason, of plotting against the kingdom?" Lyra's calmness never wavered. "I don't accuse. I investigate. And you will help me uncover the truth." The diplomat could feel the tension in the room rising with every word. This wasn't just about uncovering the conspiracy anymore. It was about trust, power, and survival. If they were going to expose the traitors, they would need more than just evidence. They would need the support of those who still believed. "In the princess." "Enough," Torin said, slamming his hand on the table. "I will not stand for this. If you continue with these wild accusations, you will destroy everything we've worked for." Lyra remained calm, her eyes never leaving. "Torin, everything we've worked for?" she repeated. "What you've worked for is power. But that power has been built on lies. And now those lies are crumbling." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Lyra's words settling on everyone. The diplomat felt a strange sense of finality in the air. This was the turning point. Either they would expose the truth today, or they would be crushed by the forces working against them. One by one, the council members spoke up, their voices filled with doubt and fear. Some defended Torin, insisting that there was no conspiracy, that Lyra's accusations were baseless. Others remained silent, unwilling to take a side. The diplomat could see it now, those who were loyal to Lyra and those who were loyal to the system. It was a game of power, and the princess was playing it better than anyone. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that the truth was out, and the pieces were falling into place. But the diplomat knew that this was just the beginning. The fight for Zoltron's future was far from over. There would be more challenges, more betrayals, and more danger ahead. But Lyra had shown him something he hadn't fully understood before. True, strength wasn't about having power over others. It was about knowing when to stand firm, when to expose the truth, and when to trust those who were worthy of that trust. As the meeting came to an end, Lyra stood, her eyes sweeping across the room. "The truth will come to light," she said, "and when it does, it will be too late to stop it." With that, she turned and left the room, the diplomat following closely behind her. The battle for Zoltron's future was just beginning, and the diplomat knew that no matter what happened, they would face it together.